Hi, welcome everybody to today's webinar on optimizing search and Facebook ads in a cross-device world. My name is Blair Symes. I'm the Director of Content Marketing here at DialogTech. Thanks a lot for joining us today. We've got a full agenda to cover, but before we get started, I did want to go over a couple of quick housekeeping items. So this webinar is being recorded, and within usually 24 hours, I will email all the registrants with a link to the recording, so you could either watch it again if you missed something, or if you want to share it with a colleague, feel free to do so. But the recording will be sent to you via email from me, usually by tomorrow. I also wanted to let you know that time permitting, there will be a Q&A session at the end. So if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to submit them via the chat button on your lower left. And either I or Kelly or Patrick will go ahead and answer those for you. So again, my name is Blair Symes. I'm the Director of Content Marketing at DialogTech. If you're not familiar with DialogTech, we provide actionable marketing analytics for phone calls. Joining me is my colleague, Kelly Schultz. She's the Director of Digital Media and Analytics at DialogTech. And we're very excited to have special guest Patrick Hutchinson, who's the Product Marketing Manager at Marin Software. And if you're not familiar with Marin, they are the leading cross-channel performance advertising platform. So both Kelly and Patrick have a ton of experience and expertise optimizing digital marketing to drive conversions and customers. So I'm very excited to have both of them join us today. A quick look at the agenda. We're going to be covering a lot of stats and trends on the customer journey to set the stage for some of the optimization and attribution strategies we're going to be covering for paid search and for Facebook. We're going to sprinkle in some customer examples and some real-world use cases as well. And as I said, time permitting, there'll be a Q&A at the end to answer any questions that you might have about the topic. So again, we're going to start off with a couple slides setting the stage by going over what today's customer journey looks like. And it's often a complex blend of devices, different marketing channels, and different conversions, both online and offline. As you can see here, some recent statistics show that in terms of device ownership, most people around the world own over 3 devices. And you can see how that breaks out by gender and by income. The more affluent somebody is, the more devices they own. But what's really impactful from a marketing standpoint is that, you know, when people shop for everyday items, they're very likely to switch between devices. You can see a statistic from Google on the right that says 90% of people say they use multiple screens for everyday activities. So it is true when you hear that the customer journey is truly a multi-device one. And it's also a multi-channel one. You can see from the stats here, 65% of marketers now use 2 or more channels in campaigns. And that campaigns that do use more channels outperform single-channel campaigns by 300%. So not only is it becoming the norm for marketers to optimize and integrate their campaigns across digital channels, but those channels are the ones that are helping to drive the biggest amount of revenue and customer acquisition. So when people are engaging with your marketing, it is important to note that it's not just multi-device and multi-channel, but that people also convert in multiple ways. You can see a quote above from Google that says that, you know, people connect with brands in whichever way is the most convenient to them. Whether that means engaging with your website, stopping in person at your store or dealership, scrolling through your mobile app if you have one, or calling to talk to a real person. So, you know, online activity, online advertising, especially Facebook and paid search, they don't just drive online conversions, but they drive offline conversions, both in person and over the phone. And I think that stat in orange to the bottom right is very telling. We hear so much about, you know, e-commerce and people making purchases on their desktops or on their smartphones, but really 91% of retail sales in the U.S. still occurs offline, either in person or over the phone, and just 9% is online. So even though e-commerce is a growing business, and it gets a lot of press, offline conversions, offline sales is still by far the norm in the U.S. So, a big trend to take notice of is that smartphones are now the hub for everything. People really do live their lives on their smartphones. You can see a stat, 51% of all global traffic comes from smartphones to your website. In terms of search advertising and searches, over half of all searches take place on a mobile device, a smartphone. And for Facebook, of course, it's always been a very dominant mobile platform. 87% of people access Facebook on their mobile. Facebook's a public company, so each quarter they put out new stats on this, and the number is always going up. And what's interesting about Facebook is that they have a very large population of mobile-only users, so people who only ever log in to Facebook on their smartphones or mobile devices. And then the stat on the bottom, 64% of shoppers anticipate doing more research on their smartphones this year. So again, smartphones really have become the premier device that marketers need to take notice of. You can see a stat from Marin on the right in terms of the different channels, display, search, and social advertising. The click-through rates are also the highest on smartphones. So not only are people engaging with your marketing on their smartphones, but they're getting the highest amount of clicks as well. So then it's no surprise then that marketers are actually allocating more of their digital spend towards mobile devices and smartphones. So you can see in the middle, in the U.S., digital ad spending estimates from 2015 to 2020 from eMarketer. You can see, first of all, it's very telling how these numbers are growing at a rapid rate. So marketers are investing more and more of their marketing budgets and media spend towards digital. And 45% of that is going towards search this year. 18% is going towards Facebook, social advertising. So we're talking about a staggering amount of your digital ad spend is going towards paid search channels and towards Facebook advertising. But it's also going towards mobile. You can see in red, the desktop number is basically staying flat or decreasing slightly over the years. But mobile in black is growing tremendously. So marketers are investing a tremendous amount of their budget towards targeting people on mobile devices. You can see for search, almost 70% of search ad spend this year is estimated to be towards mobile, and in Facebook, 84% is now advertising is now targeting smartphones and mobile devices. So we talked about how there are different conversion paths from digital advertising, but from mobile advertising, it is true that when you have more people engaging on their smartphones with your website and digital ads, as you're investing more in targeting smartphone users, the end result makes sense that people are calling more. So you can see the growth on the left. These are numbers in the U.S. that show call conversions from different digital advertising channels, search, display, and social. I mean, these are big numbers. We're talking about 110% growth in calls from 2014 to 2019, and this year, almost 130 billion calls are estimated to be generated from those three advertising channels in the U.S. alone. That's a very large amount of phone calls. You can see how the numbers break out on the right from last year. We're talking about billions of conversions. And it makes sense. People who are engaging with your digital advertising and you're going to your website on their smartphones, if they want to engage with the business, it's much easier to use a click-to-call button than it is to try to fill out a form with your thumbs on a small screen. Marketers should optimize for both, of course, but click-to-call on smartphones is a much easier conversion path. And especially true in the role of offline conversions and phone calls to mobile searches. So as we drill in and discuss ways to optimize your Facebook and search campaigns, when you're talking about mobile searches, Google says that people who run mobile searches, searches on their smartphones, are 40% more likely to make a phone call, and these people are also 51% more likely to make a purchase. So if you're interested in doing local advertising, offline conversions like store visits and phone calls are not only more prevalent, but also tremendously valuable. But it's not just mobile. It's not just mobile advertising that's driving these calls, but for some of the biggest digital advertising industries we have, usually a phone call plays some role in the customer journey. So you can see how it breaks out on the left: retail, automotive, financial services, travel. All of these are the biggest spenders in digital advertising, but they're also the ones where a phone call is often part of the customer journey. So someone will often call a dealership if they're interested in buying a car, or when they're looking to buy insurance, for example, they want to call and talk to either a local agent or a call center. Same thing with people in travel, booking a cruise, or I'm going to show you an example later for senior care. All of these big industries care about having phone conversations with their consumers. So we're going to go into a little bit more about how you can optimize some of your paid search and Facebook advertising to drive these calls. And just the last slide before I hand it off to Patrick, calls are tremendously valuable conversions. We saw how people who are doing local searches on mobile are more likely to call and become customers, but overall across industries, we've seen that phone calls convert to revenue 10 to 15 times more than web leads. So, if you're in an industry where a phone conversation is an important driver, hopefully you'll come away from this webinar with some great tips in order to drive more of those conversions. So with that, with the stage set, I'm going to hand it over to Patrick from Marin to get the ball rolling on talking about some of the tactics and strategies you can use to drive more calls, conversions, and customers from paid search and Facebook. Patrick?
Thanks, Blair. Those were some fascinating insights. I appreciate that. In this next section, we're going to dive into some tactics and strategies that you can use in your jobs on a day-to-day basis. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. So first up, we want to talk about omni-channel presence. And today, in today's environment, it's never been more important to have that omni-channel presence. And so recent research shows that customers interact with 3 channels on average before converting. And customers that interact with multi-channel experience with you convert on a higher basis. They're basically 350 times more likely to convert with you. And for those reasons, it's really important that you're not only covering the main channels, but also those second and third tertiary channels, because as we all know, our customers are all over the internet, and we want to make sure that we're there to converse with them as they're browsing around. In the next slide, we're going to look at basically a breakdown of the channels and kind of understand where some of the best opportunities lie. So in this slide, we're basically looking at different mainstream channels. So we have TV, radio, print, desktop, and mobile. Blue represents the amount of attention that customers give to each channel, and then gray represents the advertising spend on each channel, which is also sort of a proxy for competition. And what you'll notice here on the far right is that mobile remains highly under-indexed. So over time, I expect this gap will definitely close, but for the time being, and I'd imagine for the next few years, it's going to take time for that to close. And for us on the line here, this is really our opportunity. There's less competition, and there's basically more impressions available than are being bought by our competitors. And so this remains a great opportunity for you to get in front of a captive audience on multiple channels. And so next we're going to talk about the 2 main opportunities for mobile, which are Facebook and Google. Now the reason for that is that Facebook and Google in some ways are becoming the internet. It's kind of the 2 front doors, 2 ways that people access the internet. On Facebook, people are in a discovery mode. They're interested in learning about their friends and their family. They want to see new photos. It's also a fantastic opportunity to introduce your new product. And we're seeing great success with advertisers. They're taking a 2-pronged strategy where they're using Facebook to introduce a new product or service, and then they're setting hooks and other sort of middle and lower funnel activity, which is historically where Google has dominated. And what the slide is showing here is that you can see that Google remains a strong player online, which I think we're all familiar with, but Facebook has really surged in recent years. you can see from 2013 to 2015, they've more or less caught up with Google in terms of the amount of attention people spend on Facebook-owned properties relative to Google-owned properties. And so the main takeaway here, and what we're really urging our customers to take into consideration, is that to win today and in the future for online marketing, you need to master these two channels. And it's not only mastering each individual channel, but unifying your ad buying between the two channels, which is what we're going to explore more in the coming slides. So this slide is one of my favorite slides that we've been using recently, and it basically is looking at a typical silo where it begins with awareness, and then when someone becomes aware of your product and they are interested in it, they go through a consideration phase, and then they convert. And if we think back to that first slide, people don't click and buy the way that we would generally hope they do. Conversion rates are typically in the 2 to 3% range on that first click. So that means 90+% of our first touch spend doesn't convert. We want to learn from that and continue to converse with that person and push them through the funnel. And the reason I like this slide is that Facebook is historically thought of as purely an upper funnel activity, and Google is more lower funnel. But as we can see in this slide, both publishers have spent tremendous resources building ad products that cover the full gamut. So we have Facebook definitely has upper funnel activity, but they also have lower funnel activity. And so some of our advertisers here at Marin, we're heavy on search advertisers, but they're also getting into social in a big way. And some of our search customers are discovering that Facebook dynamic ads have conversion rates and return ad spend profiles that are similar to what they see on search, which is a surprise. And then if you take it to the next level, the customers on our platform that are running search ads and social ads that are seeing the best performance by far are the customers that are unifying their search ad buying and their social ad buying. And then the next slide, we'll look at some of the best practices around how they're going about doing that and how you can use it in your day-to-day activities. So some of the keys to success, some of the best practices that we're recommending for our customers using search and social and a unified experience is consistent messaging. So if you've already spoken with someone, maybe on Facebook, you want to use custom audiences or you want to use audiences on AdWords to continue that conversation and not basically start over from scratch. So instead of them seeing a generic brand ad for your product, continue to engage them and match the messaging that you use on Facebook when they go into Google and they're doing some research or they're looking for pricing or whatever they might be doing around your product. Shared audiences is also very important. So what we're discovering is that Google provides a rich amount of targeting around what people are interested in and also around their personalities. Some people may be more environmentally focused, and you can discover that through their search queries. And then when they travel onto Facebook, you can custom tailor your messaging and your targeting based on some of their personality traits to make sure that the messaging that you're putting in front of them matches what they're looking for in a product that they want to buy. Intent signals kind of along the same lines. You can discover more about your audiences on each of the channels based on the targeting that you're using, and we're big advocates of moving that information between channels. That's one of the things that our customers turn to Marin Software for, is to help them with the data portability between channels. And then full path attribution, we'll talk about this in more detail in the next section, but a quick recap here is that the industry is moving beyond last click attribution, and there's lots of different models out there. We're exploring our own proprietary models, which I'll talk about in more detail, but the general takeaway here is that to make smart decisions on your future ad buys, you need to be able to understand how all of your ads are interacting together. And for some marketers that have offline transactions, that's also important to be included in your marketing spend and your market budgeting, because a lot of our marketing activities online drive offline activities. So you want to be able to pull that point of sale transaction back into the full user journey that happened online before someone walked in the store. Next up, we'll take a quick look at some high-level results that we're seeing across our customers using these strategies, and then I'll hand it off to Kelly. So, at a high level, how does this perform? So a couple tactics that I touched on earlier. Search retargeting is where we're taking cues that we're learning from Google and then applying that to our retargeting activities on Facebook. And as you can see on the first chart here, search intent retargeting has a 14% lower CPA on average. Of course, there's big variances between different businesses, so I encourage you to try this out and see how it performs for your business. And then if we go to the next chart on the far right, this was a really interesting discovery, is that when you build lookalike audiences on Facebook, built off of audiences that use search intent, what we find on average is that there's a 45% lower CPA. So it really improves the lookalike model that Facebook has available for all advertisers. And so again, I encourage you to try this out and see if it's productive for your business. And with that, I'll hand off to Kelly, who's going to go over some more specific tactics in the following slides.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick. So I'm going to go over some specific tactics and strategies and screenshots within both Google and Facebook platforms, so that hopefully everybody on this webinar can use some of these strategies to fuel their digital campaigns. So the first one I want to go over that Patrick really touched on was building the right audience. So this one's really important because it's easy to cast a wide net, but what you want to do is really focus in on the quality and really make sure that your audience that you're targeting is very specific and defined. We'll get into making sure your creative matches that, but first let's choose that audience. So we're going to go over retargeting first, and retargeting has been around for a long time. A lot of us just think as retargeting as site retargeting. If they visit one page, we'll show them this creative. But retargeting can actually be very custom based on who has interacted with your business. So by no means ignore site retargeting, but also think about other first-party data that you have that you can retarget. So people who call your business about a specific product, about a specific vehicle, about a specific service, but not yet convert into a customer. Obviously, people who fill out forms, they're a little bit further in the funnel, right? Not yet a customer. If they do app activity, any type of app engagement, if they do Facebook engagement, right? We're going to talk about the cross-channel piece. If they're a YouTube user. So all of these methods, you can build retargeting audiences off of these different types of activities that prospects take with your brand. The other thing that you can do is lookalike audiences, right? This is more on the prospecting standpoint, but how do you integrate your first-party data? So all of the retargeting data that you use, but how do you integrate that to actually build lookalike audiences based on your most valuable prospects and customers? Again, this data you can do phone numbers, you can do email addresses, location, interest, and you can feed these data into your platforms to find these audiences. And so this is really what it looks like in terms of Facebook and AdWords. So how do you, one, build these audiences, and then also make sure that you're sharing data between your platforms? So in the ad sets for Facebook Ads Manager, there is a place for you to actually build custom audiences. The custom audiences is more of the retargeting, and then the lookalike audiences is where you start to find new prospects that look similar. Facebook allows you to do a very specific lookalike audience all the way up to a more wide reach audience. So this is a really good tool for you to actually feed in that data. And remember, this has to be your first-party data, and then Facebook will actually match it to their user profiles. And then in AdWords, you're going to go into the shared library. And this is where you build audiences that you can apply to your campaigns and your ad groups. So here's a few examples. This is actually pulled from mine. So contacts with specific statuses, you can see I have that. There's customer emails, there's mobile app users, website visitors, and you can build retargeting as well as lookalike audiences, so similar to this activity. And so this tactic will help you find people in GDN and even in YouTube and even in your search retargeting that Patrick touched on a little bit ago. And then the last thing I'm going to say on the audience piece is I really want you to make sure to exclude some audiences too, right? Sometimes we really focus on just retargeting and finding lookalikes, but we often don't remember to update our data to exclude customers to exclude our customers who have now converted. So if you are running campaigns that focus on re-engagement of current customers, upsell, that's a separate audience. Then you want to include these. But if you're doing lead gen, new customer acquisition, make sure that you're excluding your customers so that you're not retargeting them with different promos or the same product that they're already using. So this is where you can exclude customers who either converted online, converted over the phone, or even converted our current customers by understanding how they reached out. Maybe they called in for customer support. Maybe they've accessed your login page if you have an online portal. So these are just some different ways to make sure that you utilize your budget strictly for your target, for if it's new customer acquisition. And so getting back into AdWords and Facebook, this is where you can start to view your audience data actually at a device level. So in AdWords specifically, you can segment how your audience is performing by devices. So this is where you want to start understanding, okay, which audiences are converting on computers versus mobile versus tablet. And the same thing for Facebook. Facebook, you can go really deep. Actually, you can see the exact placement. So there's going to be a breakout tab in your Facebook Ads Manager that you can break out by placement and device. So this is where you can see if it's showing on Facebook versus Instagram, is it in the news feed, is it on mobile, what type of device is it even on. So all of this data can be broken out by your audiences to really understand who's converting and where are they converting. So device level bidding optimization. So now that you start to understand where your audience is converting, what device, something that I've found in the past 8 years of my digital career is that people underutilize a lot of the different segments that are available in both Facebook as well as AdWords. So something as simple as time of day. This will vary by geo, it'll vary by gender, by age, by lifestyle, so very much varied based on who your audiences are. Then you want to make sure that you're increasing bidding for mobile devices versus desktop and vice versa, depending on the time of day that they are converting. So there's data out there specific to Google, I believe, on search, where mobile access is much higher in earlier mornings and even mid-morning, again at lunch hour, and again after work hours. And again, this will vary based on who your target audiences, but you want to increase bids at those specific hours, decrease in mobile whenever desktop is high, and vice versa. So be very granular in your bidding optimizations. Google and Facebook both allow you to do that. And again, if you're running any type of click-to-call ad that Blair had mentioned, where this click-to-convert, click-to-call, make sure you have staff available. You don't want, if you have an answering service that can take a message, that's great, but you're going to find that calls convert much quicker, 10 times in fact, to sales quicker than forms. So if you have your staff on hand ready to go, you're going to convert those callers into customers much quicker. The other thing I would say in terms of doing device level bidding optimization is location. So bid up depending on the location, where there's the top converters versus lower converters. Something that I found is that external factors. I think sometimes we forget about the external factors, including weather, including stock market news pieces. I used to do search for a financial firm, and whenever a IPO happened or a specific news came out or financial, that really increased the search volume. So you want to make sure that you're bidding up on mobile and desktop depending on the location, as well as any type of weather adjustments or any type of news happening in that area. The other thing is obviously proximity to store locations, which we will get into local ad targeting, but 3 times more likely to purchase whenever you're focused on bidding in a specific location. Utilizing local ad targeting. So I have a lot of stats up here, and I won't run through them all individually, but hopefully we're covering off on some of your guys' verticals here. But local search, local ad targeting, even in Facebook, right? You want to make sure that you are also bidding and building campaigns that are very specific to the location that you're in. So DialogTech is located in Chicago. You can see I have an example here from Facebook of this is the area I'm targeting for a very specific location in one of my campaigns. And the same thing with search. And you can go as broad or as narrow depending on the radius that you want, but make sure that you're bidding up, especially if you have franchise or store locations, make sure that you're bidding up in the radiuses that are closest to your actual location so that you can drive those customers. Customers are very focused now on near me. They're on their smartphone and they want to understand what is next to them or near me, next to them. And you'll see that in Google that search volume has increased. So if you're targeting them in Facebook as well as Google in that specific location, you're really going to have the most impact for your budget. Creative. So I'm going to do Facebook first on this one, and then I'm going to go into Google AdWords for different types of creative. Test everything that makes sense for your business, and test even different awareness, consideration, conversion. Because people start off in Facebook a lot, but there's also some really strong conversion ad types in Facebook. Even consideration. Lead generation forms is one key one that we find from a lead gen standpoint is really successful. So make sure that you're testing all these different types of campaigns and the ad types within those campaigns. Utilize all of Facebook's opportunities with call to actions, carousel ads, call now, download, shop now. There's a lot of different opportunities for you to test. Don't just go with one ad and then write it off if it doesn't work. Continually test. The one other thing I would find about Facebook that I don't see as much in search, Facebook creative burns out very fast. And I found this very specific to my campaigns as well, that almost every 2 weeks I have to be launching new creative at the minimum, oftentimes more than that. New images, variations, because very quickly that creative gets stale. So that's a piece of advice that just by doing these campaigns myself, I've really urged my team as well as myself to always continually innovate and bring in new creative. And ad extensions. Use any type of ad extension that is available to your brand into your campaign. So this is really, really important because Google has actually came out with studies that says ads with ad extensions have a higher % click-through rate, on average about 8 to 10%. And the more clicks, the better your quality score and the lower your CPC. So just by adding ad extensions, and there's a ton of them, right? Google keeps adding more. They just came out with message extensions earlier this year. So there's really ones that are specific to mobile, there's ones that are specific to desktop, and Google allows you to really build that creative very specific to the device that you're targeting. Location, message, call extensions. Do mobile only for those. Price extensions you can have across everything, same thing with site links. But make sure that you're utilizing the best that you, or as many ad extensions as you possibly can in your ads. And I mentioned this earlier, but constantly test new creative for every audience. So have different creative for your lookalike audiences, your prospecting. Have different creative for your retargeting audiences. Have different creative for the people who have called versus for the people who have filled out a form versus the people who have been very specific in their website visits. So just be very specific with the creative. Make sure that these consumers feel that you are delivering them a personalized message. And one way to do this in a very organized and easy manner is to actually break out all of your audiences in different campaigns and different ad sets. This will allow you to keep those creative very segmented to the different audiences. So try not to just group every audience into one ad set, try to break it out. I know it's extra work from the front end, but I think you'll find it very valuable in terms of how understanding what creative is working by audience. And make it easy for people to convert. So if they don't do the click to call right from the ad, if they don't fill out the lead gen form within Facebook, and they want to get more information, they'll click through your site. But now, specifically if you're on mobile device, a form fill can be very difficult. Even with responsive, there's still a lot more steps that a consumer has to take. So make sure you still include click-to-convert functionality, such as click-to-call, click-to-text, click-to-chat, whatever it is that allows these consumers to get in touch with the business or your brand in the way that's most convenient for them. Blair talked about consumers are converting in the way that's most convenient for them. Give them the options. Make the different call to actions available. Okay, so those are a lot of the tips and strategies that Patrick and I have utilized in our campaigns, as well as Patrick, obviously, for his clients as well. But now let's get into some attribution, some data on really how to optimize your ROI. So I'm going to start off with some individual reporting tactics directly within Google AdWords and Facebook, and then Patrick's going to really take it into how do you bring all of your data together in the most optimal way to optimize. So first, let's start off with AdWords. Blair again talked about going back to really what are the different types of way that people are converting. Well, something that I've urged you to do is really to break out the different types of conversion. So obviously you want to see total conversion, and you want to understand your total cost per conversion. But I think it's also really helpful to see what conversions are a converted click, or a form fill, or a cart checkout versus what conversions are phone calls, or phone calls from desktop versus mobile click-to-call, right? And so this will help you understand not only at the audience level, but at a campaign and device level where your conversion's coming in. So directly within the campaign tab or the ad group tab of AdWords, you can break out all of your conversions, and then you can even segment that data by device. And if you're in the ad group, you can segment it by your audience. So really understand who's converting and how the best that you can so that you can build the creative that has that call to action. And the same thing in Facebook. All the way down to the ad set, you can break out the different types of conversions. If it's a website conversion, if it's a lead form, if it's a mobile app download, or if it's a phone call, you can upload your offline events into Facebook and feed it directly into your UI. So again, make sure that whenever you have your audiences broken out at the ad set in Facebook, that you also break out how they're converting, because again, it's just going to fuel how you build new creative and what types of ads that you use to really drive more conversion. And again, even do the segments. So if you know this about me, or if you listen to any of the other blogs or webinars, but I'm very much about segmenting out your data so you can get as granular as possible. Even segment out your Instagram versus Facebook, your mobile versus desktop. All of this is going to be a breakdown option in Facebook that's already existing for you guys to see this type of data. So I urge you to use it. The other tool that is very accessible for all marketers, because the free version of Google Analytics is actually providing a lot of ClickPath data. So the data I'm going to go through and the screenshots I'm going to go through next is really about the click data and assisted conversions within the free version of Google Analytics. So this is not the paid version. So the first thing I would say to look at is the top conversion path reports. So I pulled mine specifically for Google and Facebook. So we talk about how the channels work together. And Patrick even mentioned which ones are upper funnel, which ones are lower funnel. Oftentimes search unbranded or search GDN is top of funnel, and then the Facebook's the last click conversion. So this report will really help you understand how people are being introduced to your brand and then how they're actually converting. It's a very multi-channel world, and very, very rare do all of our conversions happen on a one-click conversion. It's normally multiple paths for them to be introduced to our brand, and then yes, I want to take an action that says I'm a lead, or I would like to get more information. Assisted conversions is another one. I actually break this out by source medium to really understand how are my paid ads, even how are my email campaigns, how are my display campaigns assisting other channels. So we obviously want as many direct conversions as possible, because It doesn't cost us money. It really means people found out about our brand and they're coming to our site. But what is driving people to learn about our brand and actually then come directly to our site? And that's where this data will really show you that additional lift that your paid campaigns are driving. So it shows you what was assisted versus what was just the last click. And then in that report, you can even add a secondary dimension where you're breaking it out by desktop versus mobile. So this is, again, very helpful to understand not just what channels are assisting other channels, but what devices and what channels are assisting them. So all of this data will help you decide where to push your budget. And I think that's really valuable because we push budgets at campaign levels, right? But we need data at a very granular segment to understand when to give more budget to one campaign versus another one. So with that, I'm going to pass it back off to Patrick, and he's going to talk about really combining your data to really fuel optimizations from one platform.
Thanks, Kelly. So for the last 3 slides in the section, we'll continue the conversation about attribution, and to kick it off, I like to think about ad buying as sharing a parallel path with investing. We're entrusted with capital and we're expected to invest it wisely to maximize our returns for our business or for our clients or for an agency. In order to do that, we need clean, accurate, useful data, and that's what this slide is concerned with, unlocking our customer journey with attribution. So here we have 2 cuts of conversion data. On the left is a traditional last click model, and on the right is a omni interaction model. And you'll notice that there's a stark contrast between each. So on the left, Google gets a lot more credit than on the right. And the reason for that is that with a omni model, we're looking at all the interactions on a sessionized basis where we can see someone saw our ad or they interacted with it, and that leads to other events. And so with this cut of the data, you can make different buying decisions around how you want to allocate your ad spend in the future. If you're only looking at on a last click basis, it may look like Facebook is not a big contributor to your performance. If you look at it on the right-hand side there, you'll notice that Facebook actually does contribute substantially to the performance of your overall ad spend. And what we'll look at in the next section is how to test this to understand just what sort of contribution margin different channels have to your overall performance. So if we return to that investing analogy, buying ads on a last click basis is basically like looking at yesterday's stock price and trying to make buy and sell decisions. It just doesn't give you the full picture. You don't get to see the full playing board. And so we think it's very important for marketers to go beyond last click and start thinking about how they can understand all the touch points that lead to a conversion event. And we'll talk about that in the next slides. So for a lot of our customers, we like to run test and control and look for incremental lift. And in this example, we're looking at search only compared to search and social ad buying. And what we're looking for ultimately is how much of an incremental bump do we get out of combining and unifying our search and social ad buying. And in the next section, we're going to look at some examples of how you can do this on your own in your day-to-day activities. So the first part here is to start with a hypothesis and then pick one of these tests to run. So one that we're seeing great success with is you can start with a hypothesis that if you introduce a lot of people to your product on a cost-efficient basis, you can drive them into keywords where you have lower CPCs, which will reduce your CPAs and increase your return on ad spend. And the example I put here is buying Facebook ad videos and then pushing those people into your branded keywords, setting hooks for those people when they search for your product. And what we're seeing is an increase in conversion rates at lower overall cost bases. Other examples that we've talked about already are interesting ways to use retargeting. So for taking AdWords and Facebook as an example, we want to take that search intent data, we want to harvest it for people that do not convert, and then turn that into something actionable on social or display so that we can continue to talk to that person but already use the data that we've paid for on Google. Another example would be to cross-sell and upsell people that have become new customers. So these are people that we know have already engaged with our ads, they like our products, we have more to sell these people, maybe based on what they already purchased or just other things in our inventory. And so we want to continue to converse with these people over the coming days, weeks, and months after they purchase from us. And then, of course, Marin Software offers some proprietary technology to help execute these strategies and these tactics. So if there's any questions about that, I'm happy to talk about them in the Q&A section. So with that, I will hand over to Blair to look at a case study.
Thanks, Patrick. So just a reminder, if you have any questions, I've seen a bunch come in, but please type them in the chat box in your lower left, and we'll try our best to answer as many as we can. I'd like to conclude our formal presentation just by showing you a quick customer success story that involves both DialogTech and Marin. So this customer is a senior living provider with 10 luxury locations in the U.S. So really, they're combining 5-star service with long-term care. It's targeting, people of a certain age, of a certain income, and marketing's role is to deliver qualified leads to each property. So we're talking about a centralized marketing team who are running localized campaigns from paid search, social ads, direct mail, email, newsletter, newspaper ads, all kinds of advertising at a local level to send leads to their 10 locations. And as you would imagine with senior care, phone calls are a critical part of the customer journey and a huge KPI for the marketing team. No one's going to drop grandma or grandpa into an online shopping cart. You obviously want to have a conversation with that person. It's a major decision. So phone calls were a major goal of their marketing. And their VP of marketing came to DialogTech with a problem about being able to track attribution for their calls. He knew that he was driving a ton of volume to each of his local sales centers, but he didn't know what was causing that volume. So when he was in front of his executive team and they were asking him what kind of value he's driving, he couldn't say exactly what was happening. He could only say what he think was happening, and that was a big problem for him. So first he came to DialogTech, and we were able to help him attribute the source of every call he's generating from all of his marketing. So you can see the different sources on the left. When one of those sources generates a phone call, DialogTech is capturing the marketing channel, the specific ad, the search keywords. If it comes from an email, which email or which exact direct mail piece. If they visit a website activity, what their activity was before they called. And then they're also capturing information around the caller, their phone number, their location, the time of day of the call, and capturing that data around each call and passing it into the other tools that this provider was using. So we're talking about Google Analytics, which they're using to measure online activity and conversions, and their CRM system, which they were using to basically follow both phone calls and online conversions for each location through the sales cycle to see, does it become an appointment? Did the person show up for the appointment? Did they become a customer or client of one of their locations? And then going back and being able to optimize for what was driving not just the most calls, but the most conversions and customers for each location. And it'd be able to prove the value of the marketing they're generating. Now, for paid search, paid search is obviously a major source of conversions. Some of the best conversions they were generating was from paid search advertising. So this senior living provider connected DialogTech with Marin Software, and by doing this, they were able, for all of their different, from Google AdWords as well as for Bing, they were able to, when somebody calls, pass that data, that source data from DialogTech into Marin, and Marin is able to automatically adjust the spend for that provider for the keywords that were driving the most calls and customers, while eliminating spend on the keywords that just weren't having that kind of an impact. So by automating this, by being able to really know exactly which keywords are driving not just the most conversions, but customers, and having Marin automate some of that optimization, they were able to see a big lift in ROI and customer acquisition. So thank you again. We're going to take the remainder of the time to do some Q&A, but before I do, I wanted to say if you're interested in learning more about how to attribute phone calls and get actionable analytics for your phone calls from your marketing, please visit the DialogTech website and request a demo. Or if you're interested in Marin's cross-channel performance advertising platform as a way to optimize your ROI across your digital channels, please visit the Marin website and download some of their resources or request a demo, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. So with that, I see a bunch of questions here that we've got. Let me go ahead and dig in and just go down the list. So I think the first question, maybe Kelly, you can answer this. It's a question around Google Voice numbers. So to track campaigns, what do you think of Google Voice numbers?
So I think that this question, I hope, is referring to Google forwarding numbers or Google call extensions just directly within the Google UI or Google AdWords UI. And yes, you absolutely, if you want reporting in your Google AdWords, no matter what, even if you are using DialogTech, you have to use a Google forwarding number. It's no extra cost to use that, but you do have to use a Google forwarding number in order to get your conversions matched in the AdWords user interface. Now, what Google Call Extensions out of the box does not provide is an integration into your CRM or your or any insight into the quality of the call that's driven. So oftentimes, I don't know if anybody else has this, but Google AdWords seems to be over-reporting on conversions, regardless of if it's a call or a online conversion. And that's just because of the way the different pixels fire and the way that Google counts calls. So I would have to go into my CRM system and make sure that there's no duplicates and that everything is quality. And for that, you need to use something outside of just Google Call Extensions. But regardless, you do need to use Google Call Extensions with a forwarding number to get those reporting metrics within Google AdWords.
So I'm going to just keep firing questions off because we've got a ton here. There's a question here, maybe Patrick, you can answer. Briefly, are there any specific industries where advertisers benefit from some of the cross-channel spend and some of the strategies we talked about today?
Sure, yeah, it's a great question. I would say, at Marin Software, our focus is on performance marketers first and foremost. That's really where we excel. And retail makes up a large amount of our customer base. Over 25% of our customers are retail-oriented. So for some of the examples I used, if you're selling a product that is direct response, these strategies that I discussed, we know from our experience with customers, and we manage around $7 billion in ad spend on an annualized basis. We see this work every day, and I'm happy to be sharing this with you, and I hope that some of these will be useful for you to test out and try with your own business, since everyone has a unique business model. But I'd say performance marketing is really where this is most applicable. And then for branding, it can also be useful just to make sure that you're in front of a potential target audience, and you get them to start thinking about your brand and potentially considering that when they go into market to potentially purchase what you're selling.
Excellent. I'm going to just keep rolling. There's a question here around HIPAA. So when building retargeting and lookalike audiences using first-party data, are there any HIPAA-related issues caused by uploading data such as patients' email addresses to Facebook? That is an excellent question. I'll admit I'm not a HIPAA expert, but I will say that I do follow it a little bit, and I know that there are some guidelines around personally identifiable information that you can use for the purposes of delivering tailored ads. I know in Canada there are some stricter guidelines, and Google got criticized for allowing people to upload or use this information to tailor. I think AdWords now has some pretty strict policies on this, and you can actually go and read them. So as long as you're not using someone's conditions to personally target them, I think it's okay, but I want to be perfectly transparent that I'm not a HIPAA expert, so I would definitely check with your legal team before using that information. Okay, next question. Kelly, maybe this is one that you can answer. How would you know that somebody converted, if they converted offline, to Kelly's comment about retargeting? So somebody converted offline.
Yep, it's a really good question. So this is where you're going to need to bring in your CRM system, whether it's a very robust one or a homegrown one. There's going to need to be some phone number, for example, if you're going to exclude any phone numbers or email addresses who are current customers. You'll just need to pull that data directly from your CRM, and then you can feed that that data directly into the ads manager for Facebook or the shared library in AdWords. There is some API connection that you'll have to that you may need to get your tech team involved, or you could just do it automatically. Honestly, I do a lot of things manually, and this one I update my audience lists. I try to update them weekly, if not bi-weekly, just to make sure I'm utilizing my spend the best that I can and capture anybody who's new versus capture anybody who has converted into a customer.
So, Patrick, I got a question I think that might be right up your alley here. Can you go into more specifics about how you share audiences between Google and Facebook and vice versa?
Sure. So there's a couple ways you can do it. Of course, I will, since I'm here, I'll pitch Marin software. We have our own technology that enables our customers to do this seamlessly. Without a third party like Marin software, you can also set up your own hooks. You can use, basically, the way you would do it between Google to Facebook is one example, is you would use some sort of encoded URL parameter, and then you would set up a Facebook custom audience, and you would set the Facebook custom audience to look for that custom code that you have in your SEM clicks. And then you'll eventually populate that audience enough that you can start to use it in your Facebook ad buys. And then some of the performance results I showed, we see great results when you build lookalikes off of that initial audience that's built from search. So you can explore building lookalike audiences off of that initial search intent audience in Facebook and see if that bumps up your performance results. But that'd be one way to do it without involving a third party like Marin. For our large advertisers that are running millions of keywords, it's not necessarily practical, and that's why they use someone like Marin software to help automate that process.
Thank you. So we're coming up against the top of the hour. We've got one more question left. If we didn't answer any of the questions that got answered, we can always follow up via email. But for the last one, I'll send this to Kelly. How do you break out the conversions on your campaigns tab in AdWords?
Yep, no problem. So this is actually applicable for both campaigns, ad groups, and keywords. If you are in your campaigns tab, I'm just going to try and walk you through it a little bit. There's right underneath the campaign tab, there is something called segment, filter, and columns. And segment is where you can actually segment by device, which is what I showed you guys earlier. Filter is if you want to filter anything very specific, filter down. And then columns is actually where you decide on what you want your reporting user interface to look like. So if you click modify, there's going to be a lot of select metrics, and it's going to be very confusing, but conversion seems like what we all have, and that's just going to include everything that's a conversion. It's not a breakout. So then there's another section that has call details, and so that will include your phone calls. Those are phone calls from mobile click-to-call as well as desktop phone calls, anything from the call extension there. And all the way at the bottom, there's a tab called Custom Columns. And this is where you really want to feed in some of your other data. So this is really where I show in calls from landing pages. So again, you'll be using a DialogTech for this in order to get the calls from the landing pages or calls specifically from mobile click-to-call. But these are just custom conversions that literally get fed automatically into Google AdWords, either from an API connection or from Google Analytics. So it's really easy. It's not something you'll have to always do. We can actually set up the custom columns for you if you ever need that. But that's literally how I build out my columns. So it's pretty easy, but you will need to get some custom data in there. And once it's in there once, you're good.
Okay, so thank you to both of my co-presenters, Kelly and Patrick from Marin. I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar. We got a lot of great questions and some great attendance. So please look at your email boxes. In the next 24 hours, we'll be emailing you a link to the recording. And if you want to follow up either about phone calls with DialogTech or just about optimizing cross-channel performance with Marin, please visit our websites, give us a call. We'd be happy to engage with you. So thanks again, and we will see you next time.